Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing my next palette roulette in which I review a palette that is in my collection that might also be in your collection. I use that palette for a week. We go through my experiences with that palette. I show you some pictures of the eye looks I was able to create with that palette, and we do live swatches. Then we pick another palette and we do it all over again next week, and I hope that sounds like something that you're interested in. Today I'll be reviewing the Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes eyeshadow palette, which is not my color story typically, so I thought it would be a good one to review. It was one that called my name when I walked into a store, even though I'm not a neutral lover. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I am a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a district leader for Ulta, so I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education here on my channel. I also just really like to talk about makeup, so you're going to see all of the regular beauty YouTube content that the other creators are doing, or a lot of what the other creators are doing out here. But I am a really chatty channel, so I hope that that sounds like something that you're interested in, and I hope that sounds like a channel that you want to be a part of, and you'll want to subscribe before you go. With that said, let's roll into this palette review. Alright, hi, how's it going? Today, we are going to be reviewing the Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes eyeshadow palette. And I keep calling it the New Nudes, but I need to remember New Nudes is Huda and not Too Faced. So there's that. It's one of my favorite palettes by Huda. Yeah, this one is called the Natural Nudes. Alright, so this is the palette. This does come in with 4.3 stars on Ulta Beauty with 488 reviews, 4.5 stars on Too Faced with 123 reviews, and 4.0 stars on Sephora with 259 reviews. This is a $52 palette, and it does come with a lookbook like a lot of their old palettes did with the tin packaging, but this packaging is really heavy duty cardboard. It does have a magnetic clasp on it, and it is a super thin palette, which I can appreciate. I love the front of the palette because it just has all different colors of like complexion on it, which is what this is inspired by. This is inspired by skin tones, and really the skin tones that are within their Born This Way like foundation line as well. So this is the front of the package, and the back of the packaging looks like this. Has some information here in gold that's really hard to see honestly, but it does have an 18-month shelf life, and it does also open up. It lays flat. It has a really good size mirror on it. And this is what the shadow palette looks like. It does bend back all the way on itself, and it is really easy to hold in your hand. So these are what the shadows look like, ranging from really light to really deep. And it does look like you have a little bit of warm and cool in here. There are 16 shades, 8 of them are matte, and 8 of them are shimmer in some form, whether it be foiled, glitter, or just standard shimmer. This is what they deem a modern nude palette. It has 2 different size pans in it. As you could see, the mattes are the larger size rectangular pans, and the shimmers are the smaller square pans. The smaller square pans have 0.02 ounces of product in them, and the larger rectangular pans have 0.04 ounces of product in them, with a total amount of product of 0.48 ounces or 12 grams. $52. I think when I purchased it, it was like $45. We all know the price of everything is going up, right? We all know. I mean, look at the price of gas. This is cruelty free, it is paraben free, and it is gluten free, and it does, I think I said, have an 18-month shelf life on it, which I think is an outstanding shelf life. This is made with coconut water for moisture, alpine rose for health and resilience of your skin, and hyaluronic acid, which we all know is a really great product for moisture and making sure your skin stays moisture rich. I specifically have super dry eyelids, so I love anything that can bring some moisture into my eyelids, but I question whether there's enough hyaluronic acid in here in each one of the eyeshadows that I put onto my eyes to really kind of give me that benefit from that product. These shadows, the mattes specifically, are all really super creamy and silky in texture. I really love the feel of them because they're just so finely milled. I mean, I think that they're just beautiful in feeling, beautiful in texture, beautiful in touch. And the matte or the shimmers are not much different. They do feel a little creamy. I do think that they have a little bit of a creamy kick to them. And I think that the creaminess of the shimmers makes them feel a little bit heavy. And I think that lends to how I feel about the shimmers overall. Let's start though with the mattes. The mattes are really beautiful. We have the larger pans being the matte shades in this palette. I would say from about here over, any matte that you get from here over is super blendable, really, really nice, very pretty pigmented, honestly, for lighter end of the spectrum. And these mattes, even though this one is a little bit better than the other two, but these mattes, being the darker of them, are a little bit more finicky. They don't blend nearly as easy. I do have these two in my eye look today in addition to this one, and I had to pull this one in and this one, honestly, to help solidify the blend of specifically this deep, deep brown here. This one doesn't really love blending. I do find that it gets a little bit patchy. On one eye, it gets a little bit patchy in the same area that I get patchiness in every single eyeshadow, and I think it's honestly my eyelids. I am, 45 years old. I do have aging eyes. I do have aging skin, period. And, there isn't as much tautness to my eyes as there has been in the past. So I'm not wholeheartedly blaming this shadow for the patchiness that occurred in that area, but it occurred all throughout the eye looks that I was trying to create, the multiple times that I used this. So it wasn't just a one-time thing. So I did bring in this shade to kind of help with the blend of that shadow. I think I was able to work it out really, really well. My suggestion would be, instead of a large fluffy brush, use a more detail-oriented brush, maybe even a pencil brush, to really utilize the deeper shades in this palette, because they are going to be a little bit more finicky. But overall, they all do blend quite well. And I think that that is 100% true of most Too Faced mattes. They do have a reputation for being pretty inconsistent. I would say that these are pretty much their exact formula, except for that I did feel like these blended a whole lot better than I have had experience with Too Faced shadows in the past. The shimmers, like I said, they do feel pretty creamy to the touch, almost silky to the touch, almost wet to the touch. But I also think that they're very chunky and go on more as a topper than anything else. This one, it took like 3 layers of this one in my eyelid to get any kind of like real pigmentation out of it. I do have this one stacked into the very center of the eye just to give it a little bit of a zing in this halo eye look. And I think it performed quite well as a topper. I would say all of them really perform quite well as a topper, but because they are creamy to the touch and a little bit more of a wet formula, and I think also because it takes so much of them to build it up to get the color opacity that you want on your eyelid, these really don't do you any favors when it comes to texture on your eyelids. These do exacerbate any texture you might have on your eyelid. So I don't like putting them, as sad as this is, because I love putting a shimmer on my inner corner. I hated putting these on my inner corner. I found that if I was doing a halo eye, I loved the look that I got from it, but if I wasn't doing a halo eye and actually had shimmer going from inner corner to outer third, then I noticed a lot of texture on the inner corner of my eyelid because that is where the texture on my eyelid occurs. Specifically on this side, not so much on this side. I don't, you know, my eyes are different. So there's that. This is, even though it appears to have some cooler tone shades in this, this is a very warm tone palette. Even the white here does lean very peachy and warm. So if you are not a warm tone lover, this is not going to be the palette for you. That I can say I feel like is across the board Too Faced in a nutshell. Everything that they have leans a little bit yellow or warm or peachy or orange, including their foundations. And this again was inspired by their Born This Way foundation line and the skin tones that they have in that line. I think that this palette is missing those neutral skin tones if that's what they were going for, even those olive complected skin tones if that's what they were going for. I could see like this shade maybe leaning a little bit more olive, or this one leaning maybe a little bit more olive. This one does appear to be pretty cool tone, and this one does appear to be pretty cool tone, but all of them are very warm in tone. So there doesn't appear also to be very much overlap in the palette as far as, you know, color choice goes, or color story, I guess. But there, and in a swatch, it doesn't appear to have a whole lot of overlap in it either. But there are so many of these that look really, really similar, and similar enough to lend to there not being a whole lot of variety with this palette that you can achieve for an eye look that you're going after. I think that these work best with a primer. I did have them on an unprimed eye and they functioned rather well, but I do think that they work best with a primer that is set for blendability purposes. I also feel like they work better with a primer for longevity purposes. These last about 6 hours before you see significant fading in them or movement of the shimmers in your eye look. Glitter glue would be the most appropriate primer to be using with these shimmers because they are very chunky. Even the ones that I feel like are more of a normal shimmer formula are pretty chunky. I do not think that the shimmers in this palette hold a candle to my Too Faced Chocolate Gold shimmers, which is very sad because that's a very old palette, but I feel like I could get better payoff and better impact from those shimmers in that palette. With that said, I think that the star ratings on Too Faced and Ulta Beauty at 4.3, 4.5 are very fair star ratings. I think that they're accurate star ratings. I would probably also rank this in the 4.3 to 4.5 range. I think that the 4.0 on Sephora is weird to me. I question why it's ranked so low on Sephora. Maybe it's because of, you know, some, you know, crazy that's going on in the community with Too Faced or back in the day or whenever it launched. I can't remember when this launched, but I know that there was some, you know, crazy cancel culture stuff going on with Jared Blandino, which is what it is. I'm just here for the makeup and I really don't know anything about that, but that might be what is catering to that low score. I don't know that I would rank this 4.0 stars or less. I don't know that I would rank this less than 4.2 stars. I do think that it's a beautiful palette, and I was able to create some really beautiful, natural looking, warm toned eye looks from it, even though it's a little more warm toned than I anticipated to begin with. I still thought that the eye looks were beautiful, but I think that when people pick this up, they expect there to be a little bit more cool tone in it, which is what I was seeing in the comment section, than what actually exists in this palette. There was a lot of I took it back because it was too, you know, warm tone for me. And I understand that, but I just don't think it's a bad palette. I think that, you know, it being warm tone is one thing. It being a bad palette is another. And when I think of ranking a palette, like 4.0 and below is not necessarily an awesome palette. In my mind, it's going to be like if I looked at a 4.0 in a review status, I might look past that palette because there's far too many, you know, 1-star ratings than there is, you know, 4 or 5-star ratings, which is, I don't see this being a 5-star rating palette, but I also don't think it's a 4-star rating palette. Does that make sense? Am I making sense to anybody? With that said, let's go ahead and swatch it, and then I am going to pick my new palette and we'll get you out of here. I do think I am going to do the mattes first, and then I am going to do the shimmers. Just because of the nature of the beast. Like I said, all of the rectangle pans are mattes and all the square pans are shimmers. I think that this is a really great concept in a palette, which I want to speak to before I move on, where every single matte has a corresponding shimmer that goes with it. Sometimes that's not the case. You know, we forget sometimes that there's a whole different beauty community out there that knows nothing about what we know here on the YouTubes. And sometimes those people just want a matte shade and a shimmer shade that corresponds with it. And I think that this is a wonderful setup. I know that that Too Faced isn't the only one that is doing that, but I do think that it's smart. I also think that it's smart that the larger pans in this palette are mattes. Most of the everyday makeup world will go through a matte before they go through a shimmer. So myself included, the beauty community included, we would go through a matte before we go through a shimmer. I mean, specifically speaking, on my eye look today, I do have, you know, 4 different colors of mattes and 3 different colors of shimmers. That's not normal. Normally it would be like 3 different colors of mattes and 1 shimmer, possibly 2, but that it just makes sense that the bigger pans are also mattes. Let's swatch this and then we can get you out of here. The first shade is going to be Swan. Swan is going to be a pale peachy cream color. This does lean very peachy in an eye look. It's actually quite a bit warmer than it appears in the pan. I do think that this appears to be one of the more neutral shades in the pan, and I guess it is one of the more neutral shades in the pan, but it still has a peachy shift to it that leans very warm. And then we have this one, which is called Seashell, and it is a straight up peach, a very light straight up peach. Then we have Nude, which I have deemed a yellow toned brown. Then we have Petal, which I have deemed a corally pink. You can barely see it. Then we have Warm Rose, which is a dusty pinky mauve tone. Then we have Maple, which is an orange brown, almost like a orange creamsicle color. I guess I'm gonna go down here. So I want to put their counterpart shimmers right next to them. This one is called Cocoa, and it is a red brown. And then we have Truffle, which is a chocolate brown. I think that you can see that all of those are pretty warm tone. Even that Warm Rose, which also looks to be a really neutral or cool toned mauve in the pan, is actually quite warm in swatch. Okay, I'm gonna try and swatch their shimmer counterparts with them. So first we have this one here, Glistening Snow, and it was the surprise of the palette. It is a duochrome. It's one of those white to gold. This is a pretty standard duochrome in the beauty community, and this one actually is in this palette, which was surprising. The next one is this one, which is called Shimmering Pearl. This is a pinky golden champagne shade, and this one I would say has the traditional Too Faced formula to it. It's a little bit less chunky than some of the other ones. Then we have this one. I'm trying to stay right on top of the shades that they belong next to. That one is called Sparkling Sand. It is a bronzy rose gold shade. And then we have this one, which is rose gold. Can you guys see how similar those are? The differences is one is a little bit more bronzy and the other one is a little bit more pink. And then we have Sparkling Rum, which is a lot more plummy than I really thought it was going to be. But it is a beautiful like plummy brown mauve toned shimmer. All right, and the last three, we have this one, which is called Golden Light, and it is a very orange gold shimmer. Then we have this one, which is called Sugared Chestnut. It is a golden brown. And then we have this one, which is called Sparkling Sable, and it is a brown tone red, almost a burgundy. It is in my eye look today. So those are the shades that we're dealing with in this Too Faced palette. I do think that you can see that they are a lot more warm tone than they maybe initially appear in the palette. I still think that they're beautiful, and I still will be keeping this palette because I did have a lot of fun with them. But I think that these shimmers don't do much for the palette, if I'm honest. I think that the shimmer formula in this palette could have been a glorious shimmer formula. They did just come out with another one called, I believe, Sunset Nudes. I could be wrong on the name, but it does appear, I'll get a picture of it in here, but it does appear a lot more deep than this one does. I would venture to say it's probably just as warm as this one is. I doubt that there's any kind of difference in the neutrality of it. I haven't touched it yet. I haven't, swatched it in stores to see if it's got a different kind of neutrality to it. I do think through the lens of whether these shades would work on a deeper skin tone than mine or no, that palette would be the choice for a deeper skin tone, because it does seem to be and appear deeper than this one. And I know that these shades from about this pink over, and I think that you can see that in the swatches as well, are really light and might show up on a deeper skin tone a lot more powdery or chalky than they did on my skin tone. I will tell you, I loved this one in my brow bone. I also used it quite often as a set to my eyeshadow base, which I very rarely set my base, but that is how I found these worked actually best. There was next to no fallout with this palette. I did have a little bit of fallout when using these three shadows, but the mattes, but I do think that that is because they're deeper shadows, and I noticed it more with the shimmers. I don't remember having a day when I was wiping off chunky shimmers off of my face, which I give kudos to them for, because sometimes a chunky shimmer just is chunky and it falls out all over the place. But I think that what also lent to that is the fact that these work a lot better as like a topper. I think that you can see that straight up finger swatches, you can see a little bit of pigmentation in them, but read between the lines and know that when you use a brush for this, or when you use like, even your finger and you're not like straight up swatching it, swiping it across your eyes, this is not the pigmentation that you're going to get from those shimmers. And this one here, as dark as it is in my finger swatch, is what is on my eye look today, in part. And it took me 3 actual applications of it with the brush to get it to be as opaque as it is currently in that finger swatch. So I like the palette. I'll keep the palette. I do think that it blends actually quite a bit better than most of the other Too Faced palettes that I have in my collection. I also have the Peach Perfect and the Gingerbread Spicy, and I have one of the Too Faced Tutti Frutti ones, the purple one. I think that this one blends a lot better than those ones do. So with that said, I do think that this is a better formula than the tin palettes, but I think that the shimmers were not as good as the ones in the chocolate gold. So I will be keeping it. I did enjoy it. I had a good time with it. I hope that you guys enjoyed the eye looks that I was able to create. Please let me know what your favorite one is down in the comments section, and please let me know what your thoughts are on this palette. If you also own this palette, I would love to hear from you, and I'm sure that the community of people that watch my videos would also love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this palette as well. I wanted to also make mention of this palette before I go today, because I told you guys that I would update you. I kept this palette in for this week also, just to utilize it with different eye primers, utilize it differently in my eye looks with different colors to see if I felt any differently about it coming out of this week. Last week I said that I didn't think it was appropriate for an eye palette, even though I had placed it in my eye palettes, because I thought I would get more use out of it that way, because these are not shades I can use on my face as a highlighter. That stands true today. I have used it with multiple other primers on my eyes. I've used it without a primer on my eyes. It doesn't matter how I use this on my eyes. It is the worst. It is so creasy, and it, like, I don't have oily eyelids, but it, like, by hour 2, it's dissipated from like the lid space on my eyes, but gathered up into the crease of my eyelid. I don't think it's fantastic. The only place that I really found myself loving this is inner corner. And today I've actually got this orange on in my inner corner, and it looks quite a bit different on screen than it does in real life. On screen, it looks very red, and it looks like I'm maybe bleeding out of the corners of my eyes. I'm not. It's just this highlight, and I just don't think that that highlight is going to be appropriate for my inner corner, which is fine. It is fine. It is one that I do like on my cheeks when I have like a corally blush on my cheeks. Bottom line, I'm in this place where I don't know what to do with this palette because I love it. It's beautiful, but it's not colors that I can use on my face as, for the most part, as a highlight. And some of them, like specifically this red one over here and this orange one over here, work really well as a glowy blush, but the rest of them don't work well as a glowy blush. This blue one doesn't work well as anything. Like I can't wear that as a highlight. I can't wear that as an eyeshadow because it folds up into the crease of my eye looks and just looks awful. I don't know what to do with this palette. It's stunning. This shade right here, stunning. This shade right here, stunning. But none of them are highlighter shades for me, and also I can't use them as highlights or as eyeshadows. So I don't feel like this is a palette that you can use on your eyes. And I also don't feel like it's a palette that I can use on my face. So that's that. I just wanted to make sure I updated you guys because I told you I would. I'm gonna go pick a new palette. I will be right back. That was the longest journey ever to come up with what I am doing for this coming week. And the biggest reason why is because the main palette that I'm choosing has a lot of color to it, but I also wanted to pick something that was going to be complementary to it, but give me a little bit more of the depth that I think that this palette lacks, even though I think that this palette is a beautiful palette. So first and foremost, we're going to start with this one, which is the Nars Summer Unrated palette. It looks like this for packaging purposes, and this is what the range of shadows looks like in here. Again, another neutral eyeshadow palette, but this leans a lot more pink, and I do believe the browns in here are a lot more cooler tone, except for maybe this one, which leans a little bit warm. But I wanted to bring something in that has a little bit more depth to it in some tones that I think will partner well with this palette and kind of get some of these quads in this palette roulette series. We all know I have a ton of quads. I hardly ever use them. So the quad that I am going to bring in with this palette is this one here by Il Maquillage. I know, such reflective packaging, both of them, and I'm sorry if I'm blinding you. And it is the Color Boss quad in Make Moves, and this is what it looks like. So I really do think that deep purple in there and that kind of like mauvey tone pink are going to be super complementary to this palette, and those are the two mattes in here. These two on this side are more shimmer formula, but I do think they're not repetitive of what already exists in this palette. So this is a rather new palette to my collection. It's also Nars' summer palette for this year. So I do think that this is a rather new palette on the market. It is, as I'm filming, still for sale in some places. Nars is really horrible about coming up with a palette and then almost immediately discontinuing it. I think it's a good palette to look at and a good palette to do now while it's still, you know, quasi-relevant. I don't always do that. So these will be the two palettes that we're reviewing next week, and I hope that you're here for it. If you are, please subscribe to the channel, but also hit that notification bell so that you're notified every time I upload. I do have uploads every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I have about 900 videos on this channel for you to choose from, so I'm confident you'll find something that you love here on my channel. I would love to welcome you into my family here on YouTube, so please let me know down in the comment section if you're subscribed. I would love to say hi and welcome personally. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope that you give it a big thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here, and I would appreciate it so very much. I hope that you and yours are doing well, that you're having a great summer, that you are staying safe and healthy in this crazy environment that we're living in right now. And yeah, just thanks so much for being here today. And until next time, bye friends.